everybody, are you suffering from cloud confusion? You might not be alone. You're watching Techstrong Day. Hey everybody, we're back and I'm in Florida again. So here I am in the studio. I'm not in New York in my usual spot. And we have some other special guests joining us for the first time ever. Keith Townsend, the CTO Advisor. How you doing, buddy?
I thought I'd wear a new hat just for the occasion. Thanks for having me.
Are you going to sign that and autograph it? Can we raffle it?
No.
That was a firm no.
That was no. This is I think this one is definitely a keeper.
All right.
I like it. It looks good.
Thanks.
And on my left, all the way from California here in Florida, is our own CMO Advisor. Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. It's great to be here doing this with you in person for the first time. We've been doing this remotely for so long.
It has been a while, and and I've seen you out on the road being the host for a lot of our stuff.
Yeah.
And that's been great because that means I don't have to go. So this is awesome. All right. And then, of course, joining us remotely, Bonnie Schneider, who's usually in this seat with us, but she's remote in Florida today, I think. Bonnie, how you doing?
Oh, good. Sorry, Mike, your audio clipped out there. But no, it's great to be here in Boca Raton. Even though I'm not in studio, I am close by.
All right. Maybe we'll see you later today or tomorrow. And finally, Stephen Foskett, who is still in Ohio, correct?
I am back in Ohio and wilder than ever. But I did get to spend the week with Mr. Townsend last week in beautiful Emeryville, California.
All right. And we're going to discuss that shortly, right? In fact, we have a lot of things coming up that seem to have a lot to do with you guys in the field day. Let's join into our first topic. There's a report out from our friends over at VMware by Broadcom. And on the one hand, I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, how much of this is a real issue? And is it a vendor issue or is it a customer issue? And the survey points out that of the people that they surveyed, half are using the public cloud and the other half are going to be using more private cloud. But it was a slightly, 3-point difference. And ultimately, everybody said they're using both. And they're using them for different classes of workloads and different use cases. And I can't help but wonder, are the only people who are really confused about this is the vendors who are trying to compete with each other, Keith? Or do the IT folks have this in hand?
Yeah, so as Stephen mentioned, we were both at Oxide Compute last week, and Oxide is a small 75-person startup that is building a private cloud experience based on hardware. Really interesting approach, but more importantly, we were meeting with 9 IT execs, business leaders, decision makers, and a couple of them were specifically VMware customers, one of which, VMware Cloud Foundation, VMware's flagship product. The path to it was rocky, but they're happy. And another one, a CTO of a big biopharm company said, you know what, VMware ain't broke, we ain't fixed, there's nothing to fix. Then a smattering of other folks who are in public cloud and a mix. And it seems like most people, for the most part, where their workloads are sitting at, they're happy. But it is a mix of private cloud, public cloud, with a couple of them on the extremes, but most people settling in that middle where they have workloads both in private cloud and public cloud.
Mm-hmm. Are we ever going to get to the point where we can centrally manage all of this? Because it seems to me one of the issues of the day is that each of these platforms has its own control plane. And if I have Amazon over here and VMware over here, that's 2 control planes. Now I add Google or Microsoft Azure 3, 4, and then I got a different squad for every one of those control planes. So, can we get to the point where maybe we can finally harmonize all this stuff?
You know what? My friends at HPE Morpheus are going to tell me yes, and I'm going to tell you no. We will not get to the point where we can harmonize all of it. We've tried. I think for the most part, if you're running Kubernetes and you have Kubernetes running in the VM in Google, or you're using GKE, or you're using AKS, EKS, if you don't know what any of that stuff is, well, fine. Okay, you're probably watching the wrong show. But if you are using and you're all in Kubernetes, yes, we're going to get to a harmonized control plane. But if you want the value of the cloud, if you want to use AWS Lambda specifically for your short running nodes. You want to use Google GKE for your specific runtimes, or you're using BigQuery, or you're using these things that actually add value. There's no way to consistently abstract that across a single control plane. So we've tried, we've failed time and time and time again. That's not, I don't think, a pursuit most CTOs are undergoing.
Stephen, what's your take? You agree with that? Is that what you're seeing as well?
Oh, absolutely. And as Keith said, it's incredible to spend time not with people like us who are in the punditocracy and talking about this for a living, but people who are actually doing this for a living. This incredible group of CIOs that we brought together last week, and that we, folks like Keith get to talk to on a regular basis. Their insight is very practical. Essentially, they're looking at this and they're saying, what makes sense? I think that the thing that was kind of eye-opening to those of us who talk about things for a living was that people are not universally fed up with VMware. They're not saying we've got to ditch VMware and we got to ditch VMware now. Even though that's what you hear a lot about in the blogosphere and in the press. And what you're hearing is people being very practical about it and saying, we got to evaluate it. We got to decide what we're going to do, and we're going to do what makes fiscal sense and production sense for us. And I think that matches as well some of the insights that we've gotten from the Futurum intelligence side. So I know that there was a CIO insight survey that very much jibed with the content of the article that we're going to link to here, in that organizations are definitely evaluating where to run cloud workloads, but the big focus is optimizing placement between public and private, not abandoning public cloud or going all in on private. I think that it really matters. At the end of the day, I think the dollars really matter. And that was another thing from, Keith was talking about with this Oxide solution. They're not trying to knock off the small companies out there who don't spend a lot on public cloud, because it just doesn't make sense for them to invest in something new. They're going after the big fish who have big spend and need to offset that spend in some way. And I think that's a great go-to-market for them. And I think that there's other opportunities in this market for companies as well. As Keith mentioned, the Morpheus solution is something that's really impressed us. It's really a practical consideration. Where can I get value?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think, to his point, I've gone to maybe 7 conferences in the last 5 months, and every one of them has a anti-VMware vibe. There's a marketer up there who's saying, here's an example of a customer who left VMware to come join us. Now, they always have like 3 or 4, and to your point, I don't know if that's a survey or a real trend or not. But, and some of the issues are real. Some of it is, if I'm a smaller company and I don't really want to pay for per processor instead of on per socket, that may impact you. Whether that's enough to anger you enough to migrate, which is an expense that's considerable, varies from company to company. But, as I look at the survey, and I can't help but wonder, is the marketing messages from a lot of these companies just off because it doesn't quite jive with what the actual customer experience is in terms of thinking?
Well, that's what I got out of the article, was customers are speaking loudly with their voices and where they're putting workloads. They want that choice. They want the flexibility. They need to have that flexibility. They need to have the ability to be multi-cloud based on the workload, based on the needs. I think we're always going to see competition between the vendors, trying to get their message out. I think a lot of folks are, if they're on VMware, the migration would be such a pain, and it would probably impact the business, the ability to drive revenue, the ability to drive pipeline, and they don't want to do that. So I think we're going to see these marketing messages continue to be a little divergent because folks are trying to compete. It's not a co-opetition space, really, like you're saying. We're not going to get that central management plane. It's just not. We tried it. It doesn't work. But customers are speaking with their voices and where they're putting workloads. And at the end of the day, it has to be bringing value to their business.
Do you think it's getting any easier to migrate workloads? Is the cost of switching still high? Or, because part of the thinking goes in for a lot of these companies is like, well, if I'm going to switch from one platform, and I'm not even going to pick on VMware, it could be any of them, is there so much code in there that I'm kind of locked in anyway and the cost is high, or can we reverse engineer that code in a way that's practical?
Yeah, so this isn't, surprisingly, this isn't a technology problem at all. This is a process and capability problem. Let's pick on VMware in two different ways. Two things can be true. A lot of people are migrating off of VMware while most workloads remain on VMware. Broadcom was masterful in the way that they approached their licensing of VMware. The vast majority of VMware workloads are with the large enterprise. While VMware has something around, last time I checked, 500,000 customers before the Broadcom acquisition, those workloads are not spread off evenly. So as you're reading the articles and people moving away from VMware en masse, that is true, but that is by design. Those are the customers Broadcom did not want. Proof point is talk to one of the major backup vendors in the VMware space, and they've only seen a 3% decrease in VMware workloads over the past year, and backup of the VMware workload. So the problem isn't the technical migration and being able to move from AWS to GCP, from GCP to Proxmox. I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. VM migration is a solved problem. The problem is around process and capabilities. One solution doesn't have NSX. Another solution doesn't have vSAN. Another solution doesn't have Lambda. And just not having the capability means that you have to change your processes, your people training, and all of that. And that becomes the true barrier
Yes.
of transformation and moving from one platform to another.
That cultural
Yeah.
change management is a very hard undertaking.
Yeah, I was just going to add about the migration process. It's interesting from a sustainability angle because sometimes there are efforts to do a migration to improve sustainability, but the migration itself can increase the workload computationally, and that will unfortunately raise emissions. So, and sometimes from the sustainability angle, it could be catch-22.
Yeah.
Great point.
And Stephen, these adventures are different. I've talked to 3 different customers and it kind of went this way. Smaller customer said they could get off of a platform like VMware. It took them maybe a month and a half. Other companies I talked to, and we're talking about the entire stack, not just the VMs underneath it, which switching the VMs is easy, I think. It's the stuff that sits on top of it that's the problem. They were like, it'll be 18 months to 2 years. And then I talked to another company that just finished their 7-year migration effort. So I was like, this is kind of crazy. But so what drives that in anybody's mind? I mean, why not just draw a line in the sand and say this workload goes here and that workload goes there and never the two shall mix?
Well, I think that's the problem. I think as you identified there, the real challenge is the operational aspects. I mean, VMware has done an incredible job of becoming the operations platform of choice for so many companies in terms of everything other than running virtual machine workloads. That's really what they're doing there, is they're figuring out ways of streamlining the whole process of IT infrastructure and IT operations. And that is really, really hard to move away from. Ultimately, I think what's going to, spell the difference is, as Keith pointed out, the fact that Broadcom really wants to focus VMware on a certain set of customers, and they're going to direct development in that direction. And the customers they don't want, well, I think that there are lots of other companies out there that are hungry to attract those folks. And in fact, many of those have a really compelling story for the customers Broadcom doesn't want. And I think that that's actually good for those companies as well, because what we're going to see is people who want that customer are going to come up with products that make it easier to migrate. Your comment about somebody finishing a 7-year migration, was that to VMware or from VMware? Because I could see somebody just finishing a 7-year migration to VMware in 2025.
It was actually from VMware to a different platform, but
Yeah, so to just drive home this point and use a completely different technology as an example, moving from AWS, if you're just consuming EC2, really easy. But what happens when you've built a whole application stack around Lambda and IAM, and you're using AWS identity management to run authentication and security throughout your entire application stack. So your database, your application servers, your storage, all rely on IAM for identity management. How do you move that, if at all? Like, there is no equivalent to IAM anywhere in any other solution. So that becomes the barrier and the true limiter when you're talking about migration. How deeply did you adopt the vendor's actual, and this is why we can't just abstract away the complexity. How deeply did you adopt the vendor's unique value add?
Mhm. All right, I'm going to finish this one out, but I want to point out one last thing. I was talking to somebody about this very issue and going back to VMware, they were saying, where am I going to get all these new administrators and engineers? Am I supposed to retrain everybody on a new platform? Because all my people think of themselves as VMware administrators, and they're not overly excited about getting a new certification and training and everything that goes with that. So there's a lot of inertia in the system, shall we say. So I think, to our point, there's going to be a lot of platforms to manage in the future. We may not get to manage all of them together ever, but this is what we do for a living, right, guys? Hey, we'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back to the Techstrong gang. Well, recently I had the opportunity to attend the Code Remix conference, the summit actually, that was based right here in South Florida. And some of the thought leaders that I spoke to had some pretty interesting stories when it comes to modernization. And one of them was Eric Koslow, who's the senior product manager of Azul. And he talked about how his team helps engineering organizations identify and eliminate unused code across legacy systems. So let's take a look at that interview, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about it. Hi, everyone. I'm at Code Remix in Miami, and joining me now is Eric Koslow, who is the Senior Product Manager at Azul, based in California. He's here in Florida for this conference. Eric, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's a great conference.
Yeah, so tell me about the work that you're doing.
The work that we're doing is we're helping people maximize engineering productivity by figuring out what they don't have to work on. Many applications have built up a lot of code over the years, so as they go to modernize that code, we help them figure out what they're not using, don't have to modernize, and really recapture that engineering capacity.
That must be a very busy time for you. Everyone is digitizing and automating their new processes. Is this a difficult process when people are doing this shift? And how much automation is being used?
A lot of automation is being used. That's the role of our partnership with Modern, is we help provide a unique data feed of what code you aren't using, and then they help go through and make those changes to the repository so that it becomes very visible and people can save that time.
Well, that sounds like it's also helping with productivity and efficiency.
Huge amount, yes.
Can you give an example of maybe a use case that you've seen where this has really made a difference?
Yeah, when we've gone through and looked at people's applications, I've seen them shipping a lot of things that they simply don't use anymore. A few weeks ago, I helped someone identify that they were still shipping what's called a SOAP service, which is an integration platform from like 2002. Here it was 2025, they were still shipping that code, hadn't been used in a long time. Another group, I helped them take a graphical interface library out of a web application. Wasn't used at all. For other groups, we help them minimize the amount of code that they have to actively maintain so it works for your custom code as well.
You know, when it comes to being more green with software, that's one of the themes I've heard often is, not having sloppy code, using code efficiency. Do you see that process kind of also keeping things more efficient in that area?
It just helps a huge amount. The savings that we have is more about the time savings that people spend going into work every day, having to work on their applications. When you can identify what you don't have to work on, you have more time for the things that you do want to work on. You can deliver more features. In terms of energy efficiency, that is a helpful thing. The less code you have, the less things you have to do. We just help people connect on minimizing the amount of work that they have to do by focusing on what's important and what's not important. So it's been great for me to talk to a lot of people who are in these modernization initiatives of improving their applications and then pointing out things that they simply don't have to do anymore.
That's always good news. Eric Coslow, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay with us. We're going to have some more great interviews from Code Remix coming up.
Well, one of the things we touched upon, of course, was having more green software, meaning less sloppy code, less bloated code, and that was one of the objectives in the platform that he spoke of. And also, of course, I mentioned this Code Remix event, and this comes, of course, timely because Azul just recently has a new strategic partnership with Modern, who sponsored the conference about to do with automated code refactoring and analysis. So it's an interesting conference because it was very hands-on to see the developers working with the solutions right there, as we discussed earlier. So this was one of the interviews that I was looking forward to sharing with everyone in the panel.
Stephen, does our code need to go on a diet, or are our applications obese? What's going on here?
Well, absolutely. I think that those of us who spend any kind of time in application development have seen that there's a lot of cruft in there. There's in many cases, the nature of software development, especially of custom applications, leads us to having bloated software. In fact, I'll just point out that the recent CIO Insight survey from Futurum Intelligence shows modernization is a key driving decision for nearly 50% of CIOs right now. And that's definitely what we're hearing anecdotally as well. It's one of those things where they realize that modernization is a challenge. They have to do it, and they know that it's bloated. Other, I think, drivers for modernization, though, are a need to focus on cloud native platforms and, of course, concerns about security. Many legacy applications have, known security vulnerabilities and unknown security vulnerabilities that companies are very, very concerned with. That was an anecdote that actually came up last week as well during our CIO meetings. One of the CIOs there was talking about an amusing application vulnerability that he had encountered in his company's code. And this is a major company that's a key part of the world financial sector. And these things are out there. They know they're out there. And so the idea that you can streamline code and modernize code is very attractive to these folks.
Keith, we don't have Ozempic for code.
Not yet.
Not yet. But what's to be done about this? I mean, or is this just a fact of life?
No, so timely, I was in the internal Futurum threads. Our CTO at Futurum, Eric, shared how he completed the 3 PR releases, pull requests for a project that he's working on completely with AI as he moved on to another project. So, I have a fairly big piece coming up on Techstrong.ai on vibe coding and how CTOs should be considering supporting vibe coding. And this idea, Bonnie, I would be really interested in your input around vibe coding and sustainability. But this whole idea that I am now going to apply my agents to solve some of these bug problems and basic PR bug fixes that I would actually have assigned to a junior engineer.
The productivity, the more I talked about sustainability with all the guests that I spoke to at the conference, productivity went hand in hand and being more efficient with the productivity.
Exactly. I was going to say on the efficiency as well, and that's key, that organizations really need to employ that, because when there's code bloat, it slows down performance. There's potentially customer issues with retention, with churn. So they really need to be focused on this, making their folks more efficient, more productive, but also ensuring that what services and products they're delivering to the end users are what the end users are demanding and will stay using.
Do you really think that AI agents are going to write code more efficiently than humans? Because they were trained using code that humans wrote. So what would make the AI agent any better?
So everyone is horrible at code. I did an interview with AWS principal engineer Brian Lau, and he does not trust anyone's code, not his own, not his teammates, and not AI's code. What you do need is systems and process to do code management, review management, and what AI is really good at is at language and communications. It may not be experts in domains, but when it comes to structure and efficiency, I run almost everything that I create, from social media posts to blog posts to large research. AI has proven itself pretty adept at streamlining my language.
Mhm.
So where I can be verbose, it will absolutely streamline the meaning of it without, and it's gotten pretty good at keeping my voice without doing that. So we're seeing that in anything that's language related, especially code.
All right. I want to engage in a little philosophical conversation about programming languages then, and maybe I'll throw this at Stephen's way first. So, Java and all these languages are abstractions that we created so that we humans could interact with machines. So if the machines are going to write code, why are we giving them the same abstractions that we gave the humans when the machines should be able to develop a programming language, maybe even write closer to the machine in assembly or something that is going to be fundamentally more efficient than what we as humans did with Java? I mean, why are we putting the human constraint on these machines?
Because efficiency isn't the metric. We're not trying to make machines more efficient. If we were, we would certainly all be writing in assembler for the hardware itself. That is probably the least important consideration, except outside of certain tight and highly important loops of code. In terms of low level matrix processing for AI, that sort of thing. I think that really what the reason that we have all these abstractions and higher level languages is in search of understanding. And for me, to go with what Bonnie and we discussed previously as well, AI is a great way to help humans understand what this code is doing, why it's doing it, how it's doing it. AI assisted comments are incredibly valuable, but at the end of the day, I think that it really is going to come down to higher and higher and higher level abstractions until perhaps we're going to get to the point I don't know if I'm a fan of vibe coding, Keith, but I think we will get to a point where maybe we'll have executive coding, where executives can sit down and have a conversation with the AI about exactly what their custom applications are and aren't doing, in order to have greater understanding of really the goal of software, not just the features and functions and methodology of the software, let alone that low level aspect of it. Now, could that theoretically, I guess to Mike, yeah, sure, that could theoretically evolve into a world where AI is writing low level code and then translating it for humans and discussing it with us. But ultimately, I think that programming languages are here to stay.
I don't know. I think a couple agents are going to get together and go, silly humans, let's go build a better programming language, and we'll communicate amongst ourselves with that, and then we'll show it in something that the humans can understand later. But that's how I look at it. You know what's interesting about this, Lisa, though? If you ever see developers, they're all code shy. You know what I mean? They don't want to show their code to anybody.
Right.
And part of that has to do with the simple fact that they're not always sure how good their code is, and they don't want to show it to somebody else to get criticized.
Right.
Do we need to get beyond that now? Because
Yeah. Yeah, but that's when, from a cultural perspective, that's hard to do because they're so ingrained in their workflows and they want their workflows to be such a certain way. I think vulnerability is a good thing, I think, in a lot of aspects of life. I don't think it's part of the developer nature yet. It could be something down the road, but I think that's a change management challenge that an organization is going to have. And it's going to differ, I think, at each organization based on the level of code shyness that they have. But people don't like change, and that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see organization after organization where 50% of the code is written by AI. This is the whether we call it vibe code or AI assistant coding. Dell announced at Dell Tech World how they have AI assisted code for 20,000 developers. It is a reality. So I think as turnover naturally happens, we're going to see more and more code within the organization shared. And Stephen, just just a little bit more pushback on the vibe coding. It's not just entry-level developers doing vibe coding, or this whole executive level, I'm going to describe what I don't know anything about coding, where again, I'll point to either our CTO Eric or Brian Lau from AWS talks about how they're now writing hundreds of unit tests using what we might describe as vibe coding or AI assisted coding, stuff that they could never have done even with a team of junior developers, and churning out better code. Now, the DevOps report from a couple of weeks ago, sponsored by Google, would tell you that our code is becoming less reliable. I think they surveyed the wrong users, and it was the wrong organization to survey. So we do need observability from a industry's perspective to actually understand the impact culturally of what these code assistants are doing to our organizations culturally, and getting much better feedback loop so we can better use these tools.
Yeah.
So Lisa, who's going to be ultimately responsible for the code that's being created by the machines? Because I could easily say, the machine ate my homework
Yeah.
along with the dog.
Yep. That's a really good question. I think it's going to be different at different organizations. We talked on this program before about, from an agent perspective, who's managing agents? Are they managed like employees? Who's responsible? Is it the human? Is it the agent? Is it both? Is it a shared responsibility model? I think it could be, but I think we're going to see differences at different organizations, and hopefully we'll get some customers come into the forefront that are showing how they're doing it well, in terms of it's the responsibility of the human, or it's the shared responsibility with the agents. I think we're going to see a lot of variability in that, but I look forward to seeing those customers coming forward who are doing it well and can prove that they're doing it well, and in terms of their customers being successful with their technologies and services.
All right. Bonnie, close us out a little bit. What was your sense? What was your sense of the community down there at that event? Were they excited about AI agents? Were they scared, or a little bit of both?
I would say excited. And one of the things that you all were just talking about with sharing the coding, this was one of the more interactive types of conferences I've seen, where people were on their laptops more exchanging and working as they went with what they were learning. So it was a global event where people from all over the world. So this was I would say very collaborative in the way they were interacting and using AI, with the excitement of Modern and their partnerships with DiffBlue and with Azul that were mentioned.
All right. Well, everybody, look at it this way. Genie's out of the bottle, so there's no going back. So maybe we can just enjoy the fact that we're going to have more streamlined code that's more efficient than ever, and let's just move forward, because, well, that bridge behind us is burning anyway. We'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to the Techstrong gang. I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of the Tech Field Day events. And last week we were on site with our security field day event. And of course, this was live streamed here on Techstrong TV. I wanted to bring a couple of the takeaways from that event to the panel here on Techstrong Gang today. Essentially, the three big takeaways from my mind. Number one was a question about supply chain security, or a point that the value of supply chain security is growing. We heard this from HPE at our special event with them last month, and we certainly heard that from Dell Technologies as a big part of their pitch as well to the security space. Number two, this whole question of data protection and the role of data protection in security. Certainly a lot of data protection companies have been trying to make the pivot from being backup and recovery to security companies. And of course, we heard about that from companies like Veeam as well at our security field day event. And then number three, we had a question really from our Futurum intelligence research Our survey of CIOs and CISOs showed that consolidation on specific security platforms was very much desirable in the C-suite. But we were curious how that would translate into the professionals, the security professionals. And we did hear a bit of pushback from the delegate audience where they were saying, look, I'd rather have a best of breed point product, even if it's not integrated into an overall suite, while others were saying, you know what, I'd rather have that integration. So let's start off there. I know that Mike and folks, you might have some feelings about this third point. Let's dive in right there. What is your feeling about best of breed versus point solution?
I was shocked and appalled to discover that security team professionals don't trust vendors. I mean, holy crap, who would have thought? I mean, the issue here is nobody will trust the false positives generated by any of these platforms, so they're trying to correlate, the results across 3 different tools to see if they're seeing the same thing before they go hunting for something that, might take forever. And security people are tired of being the child who cries wolf, and then everybody kind of looks at them and says, thanks for the alert, but we can't find it, or it doesn't exist. And so they've become more cautious and practical in certain levels. So I understand why they're gun shy of platforms. Economically, it makes sense. Logically, from a workflow, not having a whiplash of your head between different GUIs makes sense. But the fact of the matter is, they just don't trust anybody yet. So it's going to have to be proof in the pudding. But I don't know what you're thinking or seeing.
MCP and AI is going to fix all of this. There'll never be another security issue again because AI will save us from all of the complexity. I am half joking. I think security professionals will tell you, or a data professional, anytime you deal with mass amounts of data, there are going to be varied opinions and there's going to be varied approaches to handling that data. And one solution does not rule them all, because each area of security, just like each area of business process, has its own unique attributes, and trying to put everything under one roof will invariably make your organization probably less secure, because you're losing some level of fidelity when you go to an all-in-one product. It's just it's the byproduct of that system engineering approach. So yes, we're going to continue to, you can pry my what's up gold from my dead hands. I'm dating myself on that one. You can pry that away from my dead frozen hands. But the reality is that I'd rather my security professionals be armed with the right tools to keep my organization safe than to standardize on any product, and whether it's to save money or standardize on data flows. There are solutions for that. Use the right tool for the right job.
I think what we're seeing though, sorry, Mike, is from a messaging perspective. I've done a lot of marketing for data protection security vendors, and they want to be that platform with which everything is managed. So that's really the message that I see a lot of vendors preaching, is that we can do all of this for you. So it was interesting, Stephen, when you said you're seeing a mix of folks that want the point solutions, best of breed, to be able to secure the right workloads, and those that want something that really helps them reduce this massive volume of security tools they have in play. But I think the messaging has been consistent for years from the vendors. We should be your one-stop shop. So that's interesting, but it sounds like that's not what the customers are saying necessarily. Maybe it's a 50-50, and vendors have to get better at going, where are they best of breed for organizations?
Well, it does seem like the customers, if you ask the C-suite folks what they want a unified platform. They want to reduce the number of vendors. That's what our the intelligence report shows. We had, by the way, Futurum researcher Fernando Montenegro also presented during Security Field Day, and some of the research that he was sharing shows that the C-suite absolutely wants to reduce the number of tools. They want to have trusted vendor partners. They want to work with these people on a very high level and have that be sort of their solution. I think the skepticism comes really from the technologists who are out there saying, but as well as, frankly, from the kind of interesting solutions that they're seeing. I mean, for example, we heard from Cpacket, and they're talking about really technical stuff using, deep packet inspection and being able to really see what's going on. That's not something that necessarily is going to be visible to the C-suite, but is very visible to the technologists. And the technologists start saying, but. And to your point as well about data protection, I think that was a great thing to bring in there as well. All the data protection companies wish that they could be the security company of choice for their customers. But my concern has always been, can they talk the talk and walk the walk? Or are they ultimately really just data protection companies? Are they really just backup and recovery companies? Keith, we've been to a lot of these events and we've talked to a lot of these firms. Are data protection companies, have they truly made that turn into security?
No, this is just, if you're talking about a SIM, if you're talking about getting in the network and flow of the network data packets, those security companies, from a backup and data protection perspective, are very good at when the data hits disk. They're not really great for when the data's in flow or in transit and stopping, whether we're talking about ransomware, some type of remote execution flaw, being within the system and detecting the security events as they happen. They don't have the complete view. Are they part of your solution? Absolutely, which means it's why we see at RSA some 600 to 800 sponsors on the show floor at RSA, some ridiculous number that you'll never get through. That, I think, that is a leading indicator of whether or not we'll see consolidation of tools. When end users and professionals stop asking for these unique variations of solutions, when investors stop investing in these new solutions, then we'll see maybe there's a consolidation and a one-stop view for all of your security needs.
I'm going to go back to your earlier point. I might argue that the whole debate might be moot soon, because I can imagine a world that's going to look like this very soon. I'm going to have an AI agent that's going to speak to multiple back-end engines for processing various analytics related to security. I'm going to use that MCP protocol, the Model Context Protocol created by Anthropic that everybody is embracing, to connect to all those different engines. And those agents are going to call them and invoke those agents on demand as required to deal with different security issues, including the backup and recovery when something is detected, because I want that to immediately happen should there be a near and dangerous present threat. And I'm going to have all the benefits of a platform without necessarily having to standardize on a single vendor to get there.
Yeah, we're already seeing it, and not just, I think security is leading the way when it comes to data analysis and data cleanup and getting rid of that kind of first level false positives. But let's bring in another business analogy. Campbell Soup at the AI Infrastructure Summit that I attended a few weeks ago in San Jose talked about how they've essentially gotten rid of, they didn't say that they got rid of their master data team, their SAP master data team, but they've gotten rid of their SAP master data team because now they're using AI to do the triage of data analysts, that low-level data analyst work. They were getting 4,300, kind of errors a day that they would have to clean up. There'd be a team of people doing that cleanup. All but maybe 5% of that is now done by AI. So there is absolutely stories in SOC operations where AI is doing that first level of triage on these false positives that wrecked kind of the CISO's budget and trying to filter. So that is naturally going to move. And I surprisingly seeing this adoption in security more than any other area in enterprise IT, I think.
So you were at RSA.
Yes.
Are the security companies fighting yesterday's war and not thinking about where the war is going to be?
Their big focus is on cyber resilience. I talked with data protection companies. I talked with enterprise storage companies who everyone pivoted a couple years ago to, we're going to enable you to become cyber resilient, which is a journey, and no one vendor has a definition of it. I think that leading with that message was loud and clear at RSAC, that we're going to help you become cyber resilient and on that journey. But I think the vendors are evolving, they're pivoting, but I think it's around the resiliency message.
And that, to your point there, Lisa, is exactly what Fernando told us as well, that he's hearing from his customers as well as in the Futurum surveys. This, cyber resilience is a message that the C-level can embrace and that the C-level appreciates. And the companies that are basically using that terminology and driving in that direction are helping the C-level audience get on board, and they're unlocking budget. And frankly, I appreciate that, because one of the things, even the lowest level cyber analysts will tell you is that there are going to be problems, there are going to be failures. You have to be resilient. You can't just have a impenetrable wall that protects you. You have to be resilient when failures happen. And the final point that I'll bring back to from Security Field Day was this whole question of supply chain and supply chain issues. Now, again, that was a real eye-opener to hear HPE talking about how they were able to use this concept as a door opener for server sales, basically. That by saying, look, we can guarantee the supply chain from one end to the other, all the way to your door. We're hearing about that from companies like Dell. I think that reflects an overall concern among CIOs that this fragmented ecosystem is rife with potential security issues.
So this whole conversation kind of makes my eyes roll, because I was on stage giving a presentation at Symantec back in the day, talking about the need for the integration of data protection and cybersecurity, and you would have an event and they would kick off, and the year was 1995, and nothing changed in all of that time. And I have to wonder, the security people are over here, the data protection people are the IT ops people, and they don't seem to have any real reason to kind of cooperate much lately.
Yeah, but you're talking about a larger challenge for enterprise IT. I've made the argument that the rubric argument, that if all of my data is on backup and I have the metadata associated with it, shouldn't my biggest partner internally be the data scientist? Because the data is already there. I don't have to go out and search for it. It's literally right here on the secondary system that I can access. The same for security and every other aspect of it. But Mike, you're talking about the complexity of enterprise IT. As our good friend within the Tech Field Day community, Justin Warren likes to say, scale breaks everything. And when you start to scale your operations, this whole ability to have interfaces from one team to another, it's a really complex people problem, as Lisa, you would understand.
Yes, that's it. It's the people problem. And that's, one of my co-hosts years ago used to make stickers, and Justin Warren, remember Justin?
Yeah, Justin from Tech Field Day community. That's
Yes. So he made this sticker once, and we were co-anchoring, and the sticker said, and I'll never forget this: humans ruining everything since forever. And the people challenge is often, we talk about it in cybersecurity, the weakest link are people. It also can be the strongest link, but the people problem is a huge organizational challenge that every business, regardless of industry, has.
I think we're going to get to the point soon though where we can all agree that it was the machine's fault. So we'll see how it goes. Guys, I want to thank you all for sharing your insights. I also want to do a couple of shameless plugs coming up. Stephen, I think you have a Cloud Security Day event coming up, right?
Well, not Cloud Security, but Cloud Field Day. We are, this week, Wednesday, Thursday this week, we're going to be live with a packed 2-day event. It's going to be live streaming right here on Techstrong TV, including the over-the-top app. We're going to try to get the live stream up there if we can, but otherwise the videos are certainly going to be there. All day Wednesday and Thursday, we've got a bunch of companies presenting all sorts of aspects of cloud, including some big names that you might recognize. So check out techfieldday.com for more about that.
All right. And we're also going to be running the RSAC virtual conference later this month. So a lot of the video interviews that you were involved in will be part of that as well. And we'll have some interesting keynotes. So do check that out later this month. And finally, we have all this amazing content on Techstrong TV coming right up after this. So stay tuned. And once again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.